There's a quiet kind of sadness that only begins to show itself when we've crossed the halfway mark of life. It's not the fear of dying. It's that moment unexpected and still when we look back and suddenly realize we've spent so many years being busy, rushing, chasing, but rarely ever present. We run, we stress, we push through life driven by all the shoulds, and yet what we long for the most is silence, stillness, just one simple, honest moment where we actually feel alive. Have you ever lived through large parts of your life and then realized you don't remember much, not because it didn't happen, but because you weren't really there? I once met a 78-year-old woman. She had raised 4 children, lost her husband, and still volunteered at the local library. She told me, "I don't remember most of my life, not because it wasn't full, but because I wasn't truly present in it." That sentence, like a tiny bell in a quiet afternoon, rang deep. It made me wonder, how have we really been living these past years? We think we have time, but have we ever asked, does time actually belong to us? An 80-year-old Zen monk once said after a lifetime of chasing schedules, "In the end, I realized it was never time that moved, it was me." The Buddha said, "The problem is not that you don't have time. The problem is that you think you do." And so, we trade our days quietly, piece by piece, for things we think are important only to find out, at the end of it all, they weren't. If today were your last day, what would you remember? An email? Or the hand you didn't get to hold one more time? People lying in hospice beds don't regret not working more. What they regret is not being fully present with those they love. Not saying, "I love you" when they had the chance. Not forgiving. Not truly listening. And perhaps the most frightening thing in life is not death, but living an entire life and never really living at all. If you've stayed with me this far, maybe some part of you is longing too. Longing to slow down, to live deeper, to really feel the time that's left. If so, let's continue this journey together. In this reflection, we'll explore 8 mindful truths drawn from the Buddha's teachings, from real life, and from those quiet moments that speak louder than words. So sit down, take a deep breath. There's no rush. You're not late. You're exactly where you need to be. Because maybe the moment you're listening to this is the very moment your life begins to truly start. 1. The wisdom of the aging body. There's a simple truth many people struggle to face. Our bodies will change, and that change often comes in ways we can't control. As we enter midlife and beyond, we slowly begin to notice things aren't like they used to be. Getting up from a chair takes more effort. A casual walk might leave the knees aching. Back pain shows up for no clear reason. It just arrives, like a whisper saying, "You're not young anymore." And so, many start feeling frustrated with their bodies. They feel betrayed, left behind. They push harder trying to get back in shape, trying to be strong again. But the more we fight our bodies, the more exhausted we become. Physically, emotionally. Here's the paradox. It's exactly when the body slows down that it opens the door to something deeper, to wisdom. In Buddhist teaching, there's a practice called Kayanupassana, body contemplation. It's about returning to the body not to control it, but to listen. Not to criticize, but to be grateful. Because this body-tired, aging, aching is still carrying us through this life. At a retreat in Northern California, a woman named Grace, 74 years old, once a yoga teacher, shared something deeply moving. After hip surgery, she said, "I felt like a stranger in my own body. Every step made me feel lost. But through the retreat's slow, mindful walking, her view began to shift. She stopped pushing herself to recover fast. Instead, each step with her cane became a kind of ceremony, a sacred return. One morning, with tears in her eyes, she looked up and said, "I thought I needed to be strong again, but maybe what I really needed was to be kind to myself." Learning to love our body even in its limits, wrinkles, and pains doesn't make us weak. It makes us present. In Buddhism, the body isn't something we must rise above to be spiritual. The body is where mindfulness begins, because peace of mind cannot happen if the body is not being heard. And truly, the body is the most honest friend we have. It doesn't lie. Every soreness, every short breath, every quiet ache in the shoulders is a gentle message. Slow down. Listen. Come back. If you sit still, close your eyes, and bring your awareness to your feet, your hands, your beating heart, you'll feel it. This body is still working right now just to keep you alive. And that is a quiet miracle we so often forget. There's a meditation where you gently scan from the top of your head down to your toes. You don't fix, you don't judge. You just notice and whisper, "Thank you for carrying me all these years. I'm sorry for the times I forgot to care for you." And then simply breathe, as if each breath is a way of saying, "I'm still here. I still matter. I am still alive." In the Dhammapada, the Buddha said, "One who cares for the body can keep the mind clear." The body is the foundation of mindfulness. Spiritual practice isn't just about long hours of meditation or chanting. It can be as simple as slowing down one step, tying your shoelaces with awareness, rubbing your shoulder with kindness in the morning. Yes, your body is changing, but it's not betraying you. It's revealing the truth of impermanence. It's inviting you to let go of control and to touch something even deeper, gratitude for every moment you're still here. And when you can truly show up, you'll realize it's not youth that brings you back to life. It's presence. And presence comes when we slow down enough to feel every breath as a living lesson in mindfulness, in compassion, in being awake. 2. Waking up from the illusion of time. There's something strange about time, isn't there? When we were kids, a single summer felt like forever. Lazy afternoons avoiding naps, the sound of cicadas, the taste of cold ice cream, the soft rumble of bike wheels rolling over sunlit pavement. All of it etched so clearly in our memory, as if it happened just yesterday. But then, we grow up, and suddenly, time starts moving faster. A month flies by. A year disappears and we barely notice what we missed. People often say time is speeding up, but the truth is, time hasn't changed. What's changed is our awareness. The Buddha once taught, everything in this world is impermanent, including our experience of time. There's no cosmic clock rushing us to grow old. But when we live unconsciously, when we're not truly present, time slips by like a dream we never wake up from. At a retreat a few years ago, a woman in her 70s stood up and shared, "I've lived over 7 decades, but if you ask me to recall the moments I truly felt alive, I can only name a few. A quiet evening with my mother, holding my child as they cried. One morning, alone, just watching the rain. The rest, I was just running." And maybe that's how many of us live too. Always running, but never quite knowing where we're going. In Buddhist teachings, time is not something we can own. It's a natural flow, like a river. We can't grasp it. We can't rewind it. but we can show up inside it. We can live so fully in a single moment that it no longer passes. It becomes timeless. There was once an old Zen master who lived in a temple deep in the mountains of China. Every morning, he would simply sit by the window, watching the mist settle over his garden. Someone once asked him, "What are you thinking about? You look so peaceful." He smiled and said, "I'm not thinking. I'm just here with the mist, the trees, and myself. That's enough." And the truth is, time only disappears when we're not present. When we live by routine, by endless schedules, when we live through a screen instead of with our hearts, then the days, the months, the years become a blur. But the moment we stop, really stop, to hear a bird sing, to feel the warmth of a cup of tea, to truly look at someone we love, that memento ever sure opens a doorway to a different dimension, where time no longer rules us, where we return to our lives. The Buddha never said, "Hurry up to catch something." He simply smiled and reminded us, don't chase the future. Don't mourn the past. Live fully in this present moment. It sounds simple, but to actually live that way, it takes deep practice and courage. The courage to slow down in a world that's always speeding up. The courage to stay present without running away. The courage to feel even when it hurts. Over the years, I've heard many older students admit, "I wish I'd learned to live slower. I wish I could go back to just one quiet afternoon, to sit with my parents or my child without thinking about deadlines or things that don't even matter now." But here's the good news. Even at 60, 70, or beyond, it's never too late to begin living more deeply. And it can start with something very small. Each morning, before you reach for your phone, reach for your heart instead. Sit quietly for a few minutes. Notice the light coming through the window. Breathe. And ask yourself, am I really living or just drifting? Because if you're still breathing, then there is still time. Time to return. Return to awareness. Return to yourself. Return to the flow of time. Not to control it, but to feel it with full, gentle presence. 3. The power of clear seeing. Insight. There's a kind of light that doesn't come from spotlights or grand stages. It doesn't come from degrees, fame, or big achievements either. It's quieter, softer, a glow that rises from within, born of someone who's spent time gently looking into their own heart. Some people call it wisdom. In Buddhism, we call it insight or prajna. And insight doesn't come from memorizing scriptures or reading books cover to cover. It comes when we slow down enough to see clearly, to see what's happening inside, to realize emotions aren't absolute truth, that thoughts don't always tell the whole story. And here's something beautiful. As we get older, as life moves into its autumn seasons, that inner light begins to shine more steadily, not with the fireworks of youth, but with depth, stillness, and a kind of quiet clarity. I've spoken with many older practitioners over the years. Some of them say, "Back then, if something upset me, I'd snap. I'd get angry, judge, get all worked up. But now, something happens, and I just pause, breathe, and then respond." It's not that the feelings disappear. It's that they've learned not to let the feelings drive the car. The Buddha once said, "The strongest person is not the one who defeats others, but the one who can master themselves in a moment of anger." And truthfully, most of our suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from how we unconsciously react to what happens. Someone says something hurtful and we think, "They insulted me." But if we look deeper, maybe they were just speaking from their pain. Maybe we were simply the mirror, and whether we choose to carry that anger or set it down, that is the freedom that insight brings. There was a woman in her 60s who once shared during a Dharma talk. She used to get frustrated with her daughter because the girl wouldn't listen. But after learning meditation and practicing mindfulness, she began to pause when irritation bubbled up. Just a pause. And in that moment, instead of reacting, she started asking herself, "Is my daughter really wrong? Or am I just trying to control?" Such a small question, but it opened up a vast space within her. In Buddhism, there's a word for this deep kind of seeing, vipassana. It means clear, penetrative insight. Not the kind of seeing we do with our eyes, but the kind that comes from a mind that's been trained, a heart that's become still enough to not get swept away by emotions, habits, or fixed views. And the good news is no one is too late for insight. In fact, many people only begin to truly see things after they've lived long enough, struggled enough, and finally learned to be still. It's like a muddy lake after a storm. At first, it's all churned up, but when the dirt settles, the water clears, and we can see the bottom. As life moves forward, we're less pushed by ego, competition, or proving ourselves. And when the chasing stops, we finally sit down and see. We see how we react when misunderstood. We see the fear behind resistance to change. We see the loneliness we've tried to ignore. We see the joy we once missed because we were too busy rushing. There's a teacher who once said, "We don't usually choose what's right. We choose what's familiar." And that's how we end up repeating our suffering. But once you truly see something clearly, you can't go back to being unaware. That's the power of insight. It doesn't mean you change everything overnight. It just means you begin to notice, and with each small noticing, you begin to choose differently. To choose silence over argument. To choose forgiveness over holding a grudge. To step back instead of rushing into a meaningless battle. And little by little, life starts to shine brighter. Not because the world has changed, but because the way we see the world has. 4. What truly matters at the end of life. There's a truth we all have to face, sooner or later. When we reach the end of our life standing at the threshold between living and dying, we don't think about unfinished reports or the home renovation we never got around to. What comes to mind are the people we love, and sometimes the words we never said. A nurse who spent years working in palliative care once wrote down the most honest things people said as they neared death. And she shared something powerful. No one ever said, "I wish I'd worked more hours." Most of them said, "I wish I'd spent more time with my family. I wish I'd had the courage to live true to myself. I wish I'd made that call before it was too late." Someone once said, "We live 2 lives. The first is the one we live on autopilot. The second begins when we realize we only get one." Maybe that's the question worth asking every morning, every night. If today were my last, what would I regret not doing? It's not a depressing question. It's a wake-up call. A reminder of what really matters, especially in a world that pulls us in 100 directions. In Buddhism, there's a practice called the 5 daily reflections. And one of them goes, "I am sure to die, but I do not know when." This isn't meant to scare us. It's meant to make us cherish each breath, to treat each moment like a rare and precious gift. One afternoon, during a gathering at a nursing home, an elderly man quietly shared his story. He had once been the manager of a big company, always in meetings, chasing deadlines, building strategies. "I kept telling myself, 'Later, I'll make it up to them when I retire,'" he said. But life had other plans. His wife passed away suddenly from a stroke. "That's when it hit me," he said, voice trembling. That later might never come. What broke his heart the most wasn't that he didn't love her enough. It was that he hadn't made the time to show that love while he still could. And that story repeats itself in many lives. When we're healthy, we think we've got plenty of time. So we delay the dinner, ignore the phone call, avoid the apology, skip the simple "I miss you." But time doesn't knock on the door before it leaves. It just goes quietly, taking with it all the things we never got around to doing, like a river that doesn't flow backward. The Buddha spoke of right viewsama, DT, which means seeing the truth clearly. And one of those truths is this: not all actions hold the same weight. Not everything is worth our stress. Some things take up far too much space in our minds, and in the end, leave nothing behind. And the small things? A walk with someone you love, a few kind words, a simple hand to hold. Sometimes, those are the memories that live on in someone's heart forever. Insight gives us the courage to see what's real and what's not. And sometimes, in the middle of all the noise and rush, we need to pause and ask, am I living a life I won't regret at the end? It's not an easy question, but maybe that's exactly why it's so powerful. Because none of us want to reach the final chapter and suddenly realize, I missed what mattered most, just because I thought I had more time. 5. Relationships are sacred ground. There are some things that seem small, but they stay with us for a lifetime. An unspoken word, an unfinished hug, a phone call that should have been made long ago. Someone once said, relationships are where our soul is reflected most clearly. And in Buddhist teachings, the place where karma shows itself most vividly isn't on an altar or in a meditation hall. It's in how we treat the people around us. There was a man named Roy in his 70s who came to a Dharma talk at a Buddhist center in Northern California. Tall, slow-moving, with the quiet eyes of someone who's seen a lot in life. During a session on forgiveness, he shared something that made the whole room fall silent. "I have a younger brother," he said. "We haven't spoken in over 30 years. They used to be close. But then, a fight couldn't even remember what it was about turned into decades of silence. I've written many letters, but I never sent them," he added. "And now, I don't know if I'll ever get the chance." What remained wasn't anger. It was regret. A door that had stayed closed for so long, he wasn't sure it could open again. The Buddha once said, "Hatred does not cease by hatred. Only by love does it cease." This is an eternal truth. But love, if not tended token, also wither. When we wait for the perfect moment, enough time, the right opportunity, enough courage, sometimes all we're left with is an unnamed emptiness between two people who were once so close. The painful truth? It's not that we stopped loving. It's that we didn't know how to show that love while we still could. In Buddhist practice, there's something called silent, medicinant, loving kindness. When we can't say, "I'm sorry," when we can't go back, when we don't know how to heal what was broken, we can still sit quietly, close our eyes, and silently offer a blessing. May you be well. May you be happy. May this heart still hold you with love. Because healing doesn't always require the other person to be there. Sometimes all it takes is space in our own heart to forgive, to understand, to let go. An old monk once said, "We never truly lose our connection to someone. We just stop walking beside them for a while. But the heart, can always find its way back. In Buddhism, every word, every action, every thought is a seed we plant in the field of relationship. And that field, that sacred ground, is where karma ripens. It's where we're tested by differences. It's where we learn to listen, to forgive, to soften. It's where we stumble, and it's also where we're lifted up. Some relationships can't be restored, but that doesn't mean our hearts have to close. A message that says, "I miss you." A simple text, "I'm still thinking of you," with gratitude. A quiet cup of tea with a mother who once hurt us, but never stopped loving us. Sometimes, just that is enough. Enough to let a new season of love begin. Because in the end, what breaks the heart most is not the anger, or the arguments, or the things we shouldn't have said. It's the words we didn't say when we still had the chance. 6. The blossoming of creativity in the evening of life. There's something not many people talk about. Creativity isn't just for the young. In fact, some of the most beautiful and honest creations only come after we've lived through enough ups and downs, enough heartbreaks, and enough silence to finally create from a place deep within. In the later years of life, when the noise around us begins to quiet down, when we no longer feel the need to prove ourselves to anyone, a gentle energy begins to rise. It's not the kind of creativity that's chasing awards, applause, or attention, but one that feels like a quiet offering to life itself. Simple, but deeply sincere. There's a woman named Martha, 71 years old. She worked at the post office for over 3 decades. After her husband passed away and her kids moved out, she found herself feeling empty. One day, while walking past a nearby junkyard, she picked up a few pieces of old cardboard and a half-used can of paint someone had tossed out. She didn't know why she brought them home, but that evening, she sat down, opened the paint, and started painting, not for any purpose, not with any plan, just letting the colors spill from her mood onto the surface. Slowly, the empty garage wall filled up. Birds, flowers, fields from childhood memories, paths she used to walk with her late husband. Someone once asked her, "Are you an artist?" She just smiled and said, "No, I think I'm just finally listening to myself for the first time in a long time." For her, creativity wasn't a skill. It was a homecoming. In Buddhism, creativity isn't seen as something grand or elite. It's simply the natural expression of a mind that is present and alive. When the mind is calm, when we are truly awake, even the smallest acts can become sacred. Arranging a vase of flowers, writing a handwritten note, humming in the kitchen, composing a poem in your mind while brewing tea, all of it is art when done with mindfulness and kindness. Because what truly touches others in a creation isn't how perfect it is, but how honest it is. So honest that it doesn't need to prove anything. Just the simple act of being fully yourself. No pressure, no fear. A Zen teacher once said, "Let your life be a poem, not because it rhymes, but because it's written with a heart that's awake." Maybe that's why creativity often blooms most beautifully later in life. Not to be recognized, but to come alive again, in the most genuine way. An old song hummed while washing dishes. A card written to an old friend. A half-knitted scarf, still warm with meaning. All of it living art. Not to display, but to give. There's a beautiful image in Zen. When a leaf falls from the tree, it doesn't disappear. It becomes soil and from there nourishes new life. In the same way, creativity in later life doesn't come from being at the top. It comes from being full, and able to give without needing anything in return. To tell a story not to be remembered, but because it deserves to be lived again, through your hands, your heart, your breath. And if anyone out there is thinking, but isn't it too late for me to begin? Then remember, lotus flowers don't all bloom in the morning. Some bloom late, and their fragrance lingers even longer because they carry the depth of time, the silence of maturity, and the gratitude of having truly lived. 7. A lesson in letting go of wealth. One of the biggest illusions in modern life is thinking that more automatically means happier. But the strange truth? The more some people accumulate, the emptier they feel inside. Not because money is bad, but because we've started expecting it to play a role it was never meant to. Money is a tool, but the moment we start defining ourselves by what we own, our cars, our houses, our bank balance, money stops being a servant and becomes the master. And when that happens, even peace, when it's right in front of us, feels out of reach. There was a man named Charles, a well-known lawyer in New York. After retiring, he spent a few months living at a small Buddhist monastery in Vermont to, as he put it, find his balance again. One afternoon, sitting on the porch, he said to an elderly monk, "I spent my whole life building my career, collecting things, but now I feel like I locked myself inside a golden cage. I don't even know who I am anymore without the title, the business card, the things that used to make me feel important." The monk just smiled and said, "Then you've taken your first step toward freedom." In Buddhism, there's a concept called knowing enough. It doesn't mean settling for less. It means seeing the limits of ownership and knowing when to stop. It's like trying to quench your thirst with salt water. At first, it seems like it's helping. But the more you drink, the thirstier you become. Money's like that too. If you don't know when to stop, it slowly drains your peace of mind. As the old saying goes, the richest person isn't the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. Needing less doesn't mean rejecting comfort. It just means not letting comfort control your mind. It means not letting worry about money block out the small, beautiful things around you. An elderly Buddhist once shared during a meditation session that, after paying off her house and retiring, she began giving away the things she no longer needed. Each item she let go of made her heart a little lighter. She said, "It's not that I suddenly needed less. I just realized I never needed as much as I thought I did." That one sentence is a living example of inner freedom. True freedom doesn't come from having everything. It comes from letting go of what no longer serves your peace. The Buddha once warned, "It's not wealth that causes suffering. It's our attachment to wealth." Money isn't the problem, but if our heart is tied up in it, we lose ourselves little by little. A young monk once asked his teacher, "Master, how do I know when I have enough?" The teacher answered, "When your heart no longer envies those with more and no longer looks down on those with less. And when your heart is that still, even a simple cup of tea feels complete. A slow morning, a meal with loved ones, a ray of sunlight through the window. Nothing more is needed, because true wealth is already inside you." Buddhism teaches the 4 immeasurables. One of them is equanimity, the ability to let go without bitterness, to give without regret. Letting go isn't just about material things. It's about letting go of the need to define yourself by what you own. Then, instead of asking, "How much do I have?" you begin to ask, "How am I living?" And that question, that's the one that truly leads us toward awakening. 8. The art of slowing down in a rushing world. There's something that's becoming more and more precious in today's world. And it's not money. It's not technology. It's not convenience. It's the ability to slow down. In a world where everything is speeding up work, news, notifications, messages, the one who can stop consciously isn't falling behind. They're actually coming back to themselves. Buddhism calls this mindfulness in every moment. Not just when you're meditating, but even when you're washing dishes, taking a walk, having a conversation, or simply drinking a cup of tea. I once met a man in his 60s, living in Seattle. He spent his whole career in finance, where every decision had to be made in a flash. Every meeting was about speed and efficiency. But after retiring, something strange happened. He felt constant anxiety. No more urgent emails, no more meetings, no one waiting on his replies. And that's when it hit him. I've lived like a machine always, reacting, always busy, but never really present. So he began learning how to slow down. At first, it was 5 minutes of walking without his phone. Then 10 minutes, just sitting on the porch, watching the trees. Then one day, he ate lunch without turning on the news. He told me that once, while eating an apple, tears came to his eyes. Because for the first time in his life, he actually tasted the apple. Sounds simple, but in meditation, that is awakening. The moment your mind becomes still enough to touch what's truly happening. No escaping, no comparing, no multitasking. Just being there. The Buddha once said, "Walk as if you are kissing the earth with your feet. Slowly, consciously, with love." Now, slowing down doesn't mean being lazy or avoiding responsibility. It's an active choice. To know when to act and when to pause and listen. Not backing away, but returning. Because unless we stop, we never truly see ourselves. And we can't fully see others either. We keep passing each other in a blur, saying the same lines, nodding without hearing. Until one day, we suddenly realize we haven't really touched anyone's heart in a long, long time. Not even our own. A monk in Lumbini once said, "Someone asked me, I want to awaken. What should I do?" And I said, "First, sit down and finish your cup of tea." Because awakening doesn't come from far away. It comes from how we meet this moment right here, right now. Slowing down isn't about doing less. It's about doing things more deeply, more truthfully. During a retreat, a woman once shared, "At first, I was terrified to slow down. I thought I'd be left behind. But then I realized I wasn't falling behind at all. I had just stopped abandoning myself. And when the mind becomes still, something beautiful happens. Clarity. You begin to see what truly matters. You know who to keep close. And you stop running because there's nothing left to prove." Slowing down isn't just for those who have time. It's for anyone who wants to live fully. Slow down to truly hear someone. Slow down to feel your breath. Slow down so the beauty of life doesn't rush past unnoticed. And now that we've walked together through these mindful moments, through aging bodies, passing time, unfinished relationships, silent creativity, the lessons of letting go, what remains in your heart may not be awe, but something quieter. Like morning sunlight through a window, gentle, but warm enough to carry you through the day. Because in the end, life isn't measured by how long we live, but by how deeply we're present. Not by the number of years, but by the number of times we were truly here. In a hug, a glance, a quiet morning. The Buddha taught, One moment of awareness is worth more than 100 years of unconscious living. And as long as you're still breathing, you still have a chance to come home, back to yourself, back to this living moment. And if something in this video touched you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, because what you share may be the light someone else is searching for. Please hit like, subscribe to Buddhism Seeds, and leave a comment below. You don't need to say something profound, just something honest. Because who knows, that simple, true moment may awaken something beautiful in you and in someone who's listening. May you walk in peace with every step, every breath, and every day you are given.